Hi, Leo. Welcome to your March 2020 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So, this is a month where there's a lot of activities centered in the seventh house, which is the house of commitment, as well as the eighth house. So, there's actually some smattering of ninth house too, especially as we get towards the end of the month. So, as we begin the month, the sun is in Pisces, as it is every beginning of March. And this month, however, we're also seeing Mercury retrograde in Pisces as well. So, this is your eighth house. This is the house of intimacy. So, Mercury retrograde here can have you rethinking intimacy. And this can be, intimacy can be like in a variety of forms. The typical one we think of as physical, but there's also the emotional intimacy and whether or not you're getting your needs met, for instance, or whether or not you feel that you're connecting at that level. Okay. But it's also the house of shared resources. I should say, too, it's also the house of metaphysics. And so you could be diving deep. Mercury is like the student, the person who's studying. But when Mercury goes retrograde, it can be a time of researching because, when you're a student and you're studying, that's one thing and you're learning things, but then you dive deep into something. And that's exactly what Scorpio in the eighth house is all about, is diving deep. And so there might be something along those lines that is really, it's almost like an obsession with you. But it could be in the themes of metaphysics or the occult in general, maybe even like supernatural things. Or there's some kind of like money issue. This could be a will. The eighth house is the house of death, transformation. So something that is needing to be rectified. And then on the fourth, actually Mercury goes back into Aquarius, which is the seventh house of committed partnerships. So Mercury in the seventh could even be like a legal contract. There might be some, and I didn't say this, but another thing that can happen with this particular area is perhaps somebody who is getting divorced and they're splitting up the assets. So all of that kind of maybe unsettled, or there's some kind of a snag in the proceedings that has to be ironed out. On the same day that Mercury goes back into Aquarius, Venus goes into Taurus, and this is going to be your 10th house of career. So that's very nice because Venus in the 10th house can give you a lot of, attraction. Venus is the planet of attraction, and you can attract some favors from people who are in positions of authority. So that can be something that the term that came into my mind was saving grace. If you're going through something else in your personal life, or some kind of a heavy matter that has to do with, it doesn't have, and by the way, I'm I always tend to think of things that are the dramatic, but it doesn't have to be. It could just simply be that there's this kind of legal matter or monetary issue that involves someone more than you. And Venus in the 10th can be something that makes you feel like people like you, you're popular in general. Also, Venus in the 10th house, maybe you meet somebody through the career, like a romantic partner. So Mercury goes direct on the 9th. So it's not that long after the month begins that Mercury goes direct at 28 degrees of Aquarius. Of course, Aquarius is your opposite sign. This is that opposite seventh house. And so something gets resolved that has to do with it. And by the way, this could be a relationship issue for sure. You did have a full moon in your sign back in early, like I think it was February 9th. And whenever there's a full moon, the sun is in the opposite house. So you had that opposition to the seventh house back on February 9th, and that could have been a relationship issue that kind of came to a head, and it was in favor of yourself, where you may have realized that it was up to you to do something about the situation. And yes, of course, I would say I like to look at the seventh house as one's significant other, but it can be any one-on-one relationship when you get right down to it. On the same day as Mercury turning direct, on the 9th of March, there's a full moon at 19 degrees of Virgo. This is your second house of earned income. So, given the fact that you just had Venus in Taurus in the 10th house a few days earlier, and now you have this full moon in the second house. I didn't say this, but Venus can bring money, and in the 10th house, that could be a raise in your career. And so the full moon in the second can reflect that, because it can be like a culmination. Maybe this is even retroactive pay in some cases. On the 16th, Mercury goes back into Pisces. In other words, it's direct, but it's moving ahead back into the sign where it wasn't when it retrograded. And so the 8th house and that idea of penetrating, getting below the surface of life is very important to a person who is, who has Mercury in the 8th house. It's like penetrating, not taking face value with things, but digging below the surface. The sun goes into Aries on the 19th, so this is the astrological new year. For you, this is the 9th house, and because you're a fellow fire sign, this is a trine, and this is really nice. The friendly angle. This is, a preview of some of the transits that you're going to see. The 9th house is Sagittarius' house, so there's that sense of expansion, and it can even be geographical expansion of travel. That is the 9th house. Again, similar to the 8th, but not exactly. But this is the God house philosophy, one's life philosophy, and things like that. And so a couple days later, Saturn goes into Aquarius. This is significant because this is a longer-term transit, a few years. Although we are going to see Saturn only get to 1 degree of Aquarius in 2020 because of retrograding, and so we're going to see it go back into Capricorn, and therefore it will go back to your 6th house. And then, and then in 2021, it'll be in your 7th for the remainder, of the 2 years of its transit. Now, this is going to be your 7th house of committed partnership. And I have a separate video on this. So if you check my playlist, it will say, Saturn and Aquarius, and you just look it up for Leo Sun or Leo Rising. And I'll just say briefly that this impacts relationships. You may have been content up until now to just see people and not really get committed, but something inside of you may really want this, may really want to settle down with somebody and to build a life with somebody. So I would say this is even beyond settling down. It's about building a foundation. That's what Saturn is about. And it's also, Saturn is about being organized and disciplined. And, it can take a lot out of somebody to, be seeing different people. It might be kind of like taxing on a person. So definitely having a monogamous relationship, a relationship that you're going to go home to that person and it's like you and them and that's it. That can feel very comforting. So that's on the 21st, and then the new moon in Aries is on the 24th, and that's that ninth house again. So if you've been thinking of traveling, maybe through your work, that's also a possibility. There might be new opportunities coming your way. On the 30th, you might even be taking some course of studies that has to do with religion and things like that. Maybe that's what you were researching with Mercury in the 8th, is this idea of, what is it that I want to do that has a spiritual or religious theme to it. And then on the 30th, Mars goes into Aquarius, and that's going to be that 7th house. So, for the time being, you're going to have not only Saturn there, but Mars. And these are two challenging planets. So it could be, if you're in a relationship with somebody, or maybe this is like I said before earlier, if there was some kind of divorce procedure, this could be more like, I don't want to say setbacks with Saturn, but where it's getting, there might be some obstacles that you have to go and deal with. I'm speaking specifically if it's like a legal matter. Mars can be like very contentious or just simply active. It doesn't have to be something horrible. But so the 7th house definitely heats up. And for you. But there can be, and come to think of it, Mars in the 7th could be just actively with a person that you care about, that you're, going to commit to. So again, it can be something very positive as well. That's what I have for you, Leo. I hope that you resonated with this. Of course, this is for March, so if you're listening in February, some of these things may not be on the docket yet. But in any case, if you'd like a personalized natal chart interpretation, transits reading that is based on your exact time of birth, please visit me at rainandmoonastrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.